Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Thanks for sticking around during this very full news and politics hour. Kicked off with Ray Whitcomb. We usually bring Bob Whitcomb in right away, but had a couple of pressing guests. We had Steve Brown with the Rhode Island ACLU talking about the appointment today of a special master to look into, oversee, untangle what's gone on.
Thing. Yeah, the benefits thing. Very interesting case. This has been a disaster here and in some other states too. And the Raimondo administration, for which this will be an albatross, is having a hell of a time trying to make this thing work. Now, this is a Deloitte operation here, disaster. And again, to be fair to the governor, it's been a disaster in other places too. But I'm not sure whether a special master would be able to clean this thing up.
Well, that's what I asked Steve.
It's so unstable, as the programming experts say. It's so unstable. It's unclear whether bringing in. I gather Steve was talking about a federal master, right?
Well, yeah,
federal master to oversee this thing.
We had Deming Sherman was appointed today.
Yeah.
And
Deming Sherman.
Deming Sherman was appointed today.
Yeah, great guy, very, very able guy. I think it's going to be very difficult. It will probably take a long time, maybe at least a few more months to get this thing under control, to get all the bugs out of it.
The big thing that Steve has continually pointed out is the people who need benefits now. Like
right,
people are hungry now. People aren't hungry in the long term.
That's the difficult thing. That's the tough thing. You've got people and the companies that service them, these small little human resources companies that service these people. Some of them have been left without any money for months. I realize the people in the state and the state government are trying to fix this thing, but I don't think they've got the expertise in systems to really do this particularly well. And the Deloitte, as I said, the Deloitte operation is deeply flawed anyway.
So the governor's office the other week had said that they recouped about $60 million from Deloitte when they said that
and they got a credit for about $58 million. You see that?
They got that credit, and
credit,
Steve said, I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
I don't care, but it needs to be fixed.
Right. It needs to be fixed quickly. I suspect it's going to require a lot more money from Deloitte, maybe from some other people to make this thing work. It would be interesting to find out, and I've not read this, which state has had the most similar situation is Rhode Island and what they've done about it. I think we need more comparative stuff. Now, every state is different, and there's some very big states that have had a nightmare with this. Massachusetts has had a very difficult time with these programs too.
So let's go from the UHIP maybe to the healthcare arena a little bit. You probably saw this week the Department of Health slapped down Prime for trying to move. It was, they said, the biggest fine in at least the last 30 years, $1 million. $500,000 immediately to the general treasurer.
Wouldn't $1 million be like 2 Danish and a regular or something?
Well, that's what I asked the Department of Health. I said, do you think they chalked it up as a cost of doing business because it was the transfer of Landmark and the Rhode Island Rehabilitation Hospital?
I think you're right, Kate. I think it's just a cost of doing business. It's nothing to them. Really,
because they wanted to move it, they didn't want to wait till the state, rubber stamped it, and the state started going through and said,
the state wanted to push it through.
Well, Prime wanted to push through, and the state said, wait a minute, you said you do it retroactively, and I said, do it. Their for-profit arm was transferring it to their nonprofit arm. But basically, when they put the application in, they switched their
sort of shell game kind of thing.
They switched it up at that point without. Again, your healthcare expertise. What are we going to see?
Well,
the closure of Memorial.
It's just a supervisory problem in this time of great churn in healthcare. The trouble is, our sort of hospital and healthcare regulatory system is about 30 or 40 years out of date. The way things are going now, with more and more stuff going outpatient, with this sort of crazy mix of for-profit and non-profit coming in, with these vast hospital mergers, with hospitals having to close, such as Memorial, which should have been closed a long time ago. I'm sorry, it's redundant. And we do not have the personnel, the expertise to properly oversee this stuff. Again, not only Rhode Island, which is minuscule.
Oh no, we're not unique.
We're not unique. They're having a terrible time keeping track of this. I think in Massachusetts, and some of your viewers, obviously, in Massachusetts are. They're beginning to get a handle on it, but they've had a terrible time just trying to oversee the behemoth of partners, which is MGH and who were threatening to take over the universe for a while. Now I read an interesting story today. The state of Massachusetts is telling partners they don't want them to buy Mass Ioneer.
Okay.
Too much power, too much pricing power.
Well, you had warned about this. I mean, this is not the first time we've talked about this coming
No.
in, but it was interesting to see here at the state level, especially with the Prime, because we know that Prime has had issues nationally.
Right, yeah.
Some Medicaid issues out in California.
There have been scandals involving Prime, cross country.
So we're going to continue to look at the healthcare. I mean, it's just one thing after another. National Grid and what happened this week with the storm.
Yeah, the National Grid, I think, I'm actually a little bit sympathetic to National Grid. I had to drive down to Stamford, Connecticut and do a little project down there, and I started driving back, and I'm hearing the radio talk shows. And, of course, they're all whining about it. But they're all whining about it in Connecticut, too, about their utilities, and then Massachusetts. And this is a brutal job, especially in a year like this time where we had, in some places, hurricane force gusts. It really had kind of a tropical element to it. It picked up some energy from tropical
It was a crazy storm.
It was crazy. You had an eye and everything. And we've had basically summer. And so a lot of the leaves are still on the trees. The leaves got wet. That gave a lot of grabbing power to the wind. And it was a very unusual situation. I think the problem is we need to do more clipping and cutting back of these trees in the summer before hurricane season.
Is that Grid's responsibility?
That's the utility's responsibility, but it has to also be a state and town responsibility to look at problem areas, the tree, and then to contact the utility. The utility probably needs more people. Now, one of the problems with National Grid, this was a rather large storm, and so there are trees and branches down all over the Northeast, and they just didn't have enough people. I heard on the radio, WPRR, which tends to have the most ferocious talk-in people, call-in people, that it was somehow worse here, that the repair reaction was, I don't know if that's true.
Worse here than?
In, say, Massachusetts.
No, it was actually,
Maine,
it was the numbers rates, because Massachusetts had a higher number, the per capita, and then it went down to when we had a lower one, but we're still both at the same level. So I think the question was why didn't we get addressed?
There's something uniquely bad about the response in Rhode Island. Now the National, I felt sorry for the spokesman for National. That's got to be a terrible job after a storm. This poor pathetic guy. He fibbed a little bit. He said, well, the storm was not as intense as predicted. Actually, the National Weather Service did a great job timing and intensity. I was very impressed.
You have to wonder.
They're amazing. Even the hour, it would start about 11:30 at night and go to,
We knew it would come, but what could be done? I mean, can you batten down utility hatches, so to speak?
You can't do much about it because we don't bury lines here. That's one of the problems. In a lot of Western countries, most of the electric lines are underground. We don't bury them here. We're in a kind of temperate zone forest, even an urban forest. Again, it gets back to the monitoring of particularly bad areas. And so you clip these things off before the storms. But after, it's too late during a storm.
It's too late during a storm?
Also, more people should have solar. The reason they have solar and batteries, then they are not dependent upon National Grid or Eversource.
I saw people, and I will not name names, but I saw on social media literally someone being like, here is the solar getting installed this week.
Right.
Like, might have been thinking about it, but like in response to this said, I'm doing it. Yeah. So, we kind of hit upon some of the hot topic issues. Yeah. But Cornelia Dean, the former New York Times science editor, coming and talking.
Old friend of mine
so I had to ask, it always happens here at GoLocal. We get a great group of guests, and it's like this reunion of sorts. So how far?
They released the high security, the ACI, and there they are. They're all available.
Cornelia was lovely. It was great to talk about her book. I mean, so how do you guys go back?
Well, she and I were young editors at the Providence Journal. She had gone to Brown University, and then I think she did something else. Maybe she worked immediately for the Projo. I came up here the first time. I was at 76 for family reasons, leaving New York and Philly, and we worked together then for a while, for a few years. Then she went off to the New York Times, and I went off to the International Herald Trombone. But we've.
Would you say
we've intersected?
You both cut your teeth together?
Yeah, I spoke to her class up at Harvard and at Brown, and but no, she's delightful. Well, she knows her stuff.
She certainly does. The new book out that we talked about. So you got your crib notes. I drove it so far. What are you going to be talking about this weekend?
I'm glad you talk about utilities because again, I think National Grid got kind of a bit of a bum rap. We'll know better when they do a postmortem. I think I talk a bit about the next column about Raymonda, what's going to hurt her, what's going to help her. Obviously, the benefits thing is a disaster. That's going to hurt her. She really needs, as I told Josh Fenton last week, she really needs to try to get this thing plausibly fixed by no later than the winter sometime. I don't think it's going to happen because it's too complicated.
Well, I mean, how
That's
much do
gonna
you
hurt
think
her
that
a lot.
opponents are going to be
Oh, they'll be
fixated
all
on
over
this?
on that, all over on that. If she had stronger opponents, she should be more, but I don't think she has very strong opponents. She has a perfectly pleasant and I assume competent mayor of Cranston and Mr. Fung, Alan Fung.
Patricia Morgan's been a lot more critical of the governor than
she's
Fung has
much more
been.
of a pit bull. She's a pit bull in this thing. I'm not sure how well she's going to do as a statewide candidate. And then you've got the two candidates that want to run just for entertainment, namely Giovanni Ferrocci, who has certain Trump-like qualities, and Joe Trillo. They're both big Trump supporters, both very entertaining,
Ferrocci
over
was
the top.
a Rubio supporter.
Yeah. What? Well, he's
Ferrocci?
apparently, according to somebody at GoLocal, he's a Trump supporter.
He was a Rubio supporter, and then
he's very flamboyant, charismatic, kind of over the top, glitzy, and then the Joe Trillo, who in his own way is very
that's
flamboyant.
Trump.
And
He's
a
Trump.
love affair. It's like Wallace Simpson and the King. It's just amazing.
But we heard from
I hope they run.
We heard from Link Chafee again this week, weighing in about the governor's plans for this early retirement. Sort of said, "Hey, wait a minute." Talking about sort of recent legal actions that happened and talked about the role of, again, reaching that 80% funded level.
You mean the early retirement state employees?
Yeah, for state employees.
I'm opposed to all of that. The problem is we don't have enough state employees. Rhode Island, actually, on a per capita basis, is not overstaffed at all.
Really?
Yeah, this is
we tend to think that we've got a lot of state employees.
No, we don't have enough to do what the public wants.
Well,
such as checking out the trees that are about to fall.
Review you have.
Right.
What else is on the docket for this weekend?
The other thing, well, I talk, of course, the latest about the Trump and Russia stuff, which is sort of entertaining.
Oh, there's something to talk.
And the smoke machine, that goes every. There's also an interesting plan by a company I've written about before, called, was it Boston Service Railroad, which is going to set up a commuter rail line from Nashua, New Hampshire, down to Lowell, and you'll be able to, and then I think eventually, yes, and then that will connect with a line they're going to do from Worcester to Providence. This, again, is a private railroad line. This isn't Amtrak, it's not the MBTA. Apparently the state's going to go along with it. The great thing is this will sort of integrate more southern New Hampshire, which is now really part of greater Boston, as is northern Rhode Island.
How many private railroads are there?
I think, well, that's the only one in New England that I know about, passenger rail. So you'll be able, if you want to go to Lowell, maybe you don't want to go to Lowell, but I bet people from Lowell want to come here.
We'll take them. We'll take the imports.
Yeah, so that's a big
Might not
deal.
be exporting.
The other thing is, there's a lot to be said for fishing regulation, setting caps to save species. In Long Island Sound, menhaden, which is sort of the source bait for bigger fish that we eat, we're about to go disappear.
Yeah.
And they put a cap on catch limit on, and they're coming back. And so the other fish are coming back. The tuna and the small tuna and the stripers and so on.
So there might be some scientific
but
evidence.
they always complain, because menhaden are caught for other reasons, for fertilizer and so on.
We'll read about it this weekend in Bob's column.
Absolutely.
Bob, I appreciate your coming in, your flexibility, as so much going on here today. It was a busy day here in the studio, so I'll let you go around the corner.
It's a very violent place. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Won't leave you around the corner.
Have a good
There have been no
weekend.
physical altercations in the studio. Okay, well that just about wraps up another day here in the studio in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Welcomed out a great host of guests today at the News and Politics Hour. Steve Brown with the Rhode Island ACLU came in to talk about the appointment of the special master by the courts today to look into UHIP and to try to rectify the situation there. Cornelia Dean, former science editor at the New York Times, talking about her newest book, Making Sense of Science. Be sure to check that out. And of course, Bob Whitcomb and Ray Rickman, we appreciate them coming in here to the studio at GoLocal. So we'll be back tomorrow at the 4 o'clock hour with Molly O'Brien with Lifestyle. I will be back with more news and politics, but plenty on the site. You can read more about the special master appointment today for the UHIP situation. One of the things GoLocal reported on this afternoon, more at the Board of Licenses with the Penthouse. So stay tuned for more news, politics, lifestyle, and sports on GoLocal. But we'll be back here in studio tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'm GoLocal News Editor. I'm GoLocal News Editor. I'm GoLocal News Editor. I'm Go.